So today I'm going to talk about this OptGroup uh, external module. And what it does is it allows you to take a value in a checkbox, a radio button, or a drop-down list and turn it into a header so that way you can create option groups or categories um, within your drop-downs, your checkboxes, and your radio buttons. So if we just look at the record here, I'm just going to add a record. I just have this field here. It's just check boxes. But if I want to turn this fruit and vegetables into a header for these categories, then I would use the option group uh, external module. So I'm going to go here and click on manage external modules. I'm just going to open a new tab there. And then I'm going to enable it, and it's called OptGroup. So we'll click on enable here. And there's no configuration for this. What this does is it creates an action tag that you can use to create the option group. So we'll just go ahead and close this. And I'm going to go to the designer here because I already have fields created. I'm just going to unhide them because right now I just have them all hidden. I'm going to select all these and I'm going to select all the fields in between and add them. And then I'm going to update the branching, not the branching logic, sorry, the action tags here. So I have hidden activated, and I'm going to deactivate all the hidden. That's a nice little way of updating action tags for all your fields or multiple fields at once instead of having to go into each one and click and delete hidden for all of them. So now if we go back to the record here, you'll see now that this checkbox, this list of checkboxes here. Now, fruit is doesn't have a checkbox anymore. It's no longer selectable, same as vegetables. So we now have these little option groups here, and we can also style them. I'll show you that in a little bit. So this works for radio buttons as well. Now with radio buttons, you have to be careful because you can still only select one. So you can, it's not like you can select one from each category. You would only be able to select one since it is still a single radio button group. Checkboxes, you can obviously check as many as you want. And in the drop-down list, it will style itself. So it automatically bolds the categories, and then you would be able to select one from there. So really all it does is it takes the value that you have set as a category and takes it out so it's not selectable anymore. And for example, with the radio buttons, this is the default styling. So if we wanted to have something that went horizontally, we can also do the custom styling where it runs horizontally, but it breaks at every category. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit too. So the way that we use this module is in the designer, we use this opt group action tag. So I'm just going to hide, I'm just going to delete this. This is what that's what the, when I turned off the hidden, what it does is it basically deactivates it. So really the opt group is all we're looking at here. And you can see on the side here for the fruit and vegetables labels, I've given them alpha characters, and then the rest of the values are numerical. So what you would do is anything that you want to be a label, you would just put that in the opt group. And it doesn't have to be alpha characters, and it doesn't have to, you don't have to separate the alpha characters and numerical characters. This just makes it easy for you to see that the ones that are alpha characters are headers and category labels, and the other ones are the values that we actually want. If you had this as 1 through 6, it might be more complicated for you to see at a glance where those category separations should be. So all you do is you just create this opt group at opt group equals, and then within the quotes, you would put the values that you want to have for your category labels. So if I'm just going to save this, if we go down to the this radio button styling here, uh, you can see here that the opt group is A, B, C, and D. So that's just, there's 4 categories in this one. That's all there is to know. Uh, A is fruit, B is vegetables, C is meat, and D is miscellaneous. So you're just separating those categories. Now, one thing I want to point out is that the only restriction for this module is that it doesn't work for anything that is where the autocomplete is enabled. So for example, if we look at this drop-down list uh, with the opt group, it works just fine. But this field is the same, exact same, it's a copy of the exact same field, but I have autocomplete enabled. And what you'll see here is that it doesn't recognize the fruit and vegetable labels anymore, and it pulls them out completely. So you wouldn't be able to use them. You wouldn't be able to use the opt group if you have autocomplete enabled for a drop down list. So getting into styling, in the documentation, they talk about selecting. You have to add the field name and then the opt group choice. And I tried messing with this and I wasn't able to get it to work. So if I copy this into the designer here, we just go to the custom styling. Well, you can see that I have others in here that I'm using. But if we go to the top and we just put that in, basically what we're saying is we want to select anything with the field name. And so let's say we'll want to do this opt group check down here. And then the choice we would want would be A. And then this, we would do the same thing here. Because in the documentation, they talk about how, sorry, this would be A still. Using it this way, you're applying this to anything that has the name of opt group check, and all of the values within the checkbox field or the radio button or the dropdown, it gets assigned this name, and then the choice is what number you're giving it. And from what I read in the documentation, it seemed like it would apply to all the values. So if we wanted this to be red, it would apply to all the values in red. But in order to get the categories to be red and the values to be black, you have to basically assign them all a red color and then go into the option, which is the actual choice, and then change it to black. I wasn't able to get this to work in here. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm missing, but the way I did it was, let me go ahead and just cancel this out, is I went into one of these records here, and just right click the way I normally do and just went into inspect. So I could see the values that I was selecting. And if I open these up, you can see here that I can move through the choices that I have. And so if I hover over the fruit and click on it, I can see that I can get the label for that. So that's what I ended up doing was figuring out what tag, what identifier, and what tags I needed to use. So if we go here to custom styling, you can see here that I'm using this label opt group underscore radio. That's for this field here. And it's radio dash A. So that's the first group header, the out group header. And then this is the opt group header for radio B. So if I comment these out here and uncomment this one out, what I'm doing here is I'm taking the header for group A and group B, I'm coloring them green, I'm changing the font weight to bold and the style to italic. And you have to use the important here, or else RedCap will try to override, that and they won't be displayed. You'll get this little warning here, but that's just telling you that you're using important. So just be careful with that because that overrides everything. So what should happen is that the fruit and vegetable labels should both be green, bold, and italic. So if we update this and we refresh, you can see here now that those labels are have been changed. And since I commented out the other styling, you can see here that these two look the same now. This doesn't have the customized styling anymore. So if we go back here, one of the things, the reason I have this is I want to show you that you don't necessarily have to have the same styling for each label. Right here, we have the same styling because I'm separating them. I'm applying the styling to both of the headers, but I'm by separating them by a comma and just applying the same rules. But here, what I'm going to do is I've essentially just created a copy of this code up here, and I separated them out. So now I have one for the A header and one for the B header. And so this one's going to be red, bold, and italic, and this is going to be green, bold, and italic like we saw at the beginning of the video. So if I update this and we refresh, you'll see here that these are changed. And the A and B are coming from the values that I've assigned. So if you have like 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, however you go, you'll be able to find this in the inspect. So if we go ahead and, so we'll leave this one uncommented. And now what I'll do is I'm going to go, this is applying to the styled radio. And this was interesting. So I wasn't able to get this block of code to work, but I was able to get this block of code to work. And what this is doing is this is saying that anything that has, I'm looking for anything that has a label where the data MLM field attribute or property has this value. And this is the name of the field. And it's kind of doing the same thing I have here, where I'm using the ID to grab that specific field. This is more of a general identifier. So this is saying that I want to grab everything that has this property. You could still do the same thing with the other one that I had before, but the important thing is this is showing. So we're changing the color to blue, and the big difference here is that we're changing the display to block instead of inline. So inline means that as soon as an element ends or value ends, it's going to put the next value or element right next to it. And it's just going to keep going until it reaches the end of the page, and then it's going to wrap. Whereas block will take that element and increase its padding until it gets to the end of the line. So that element is the only thing that takes place, that takes the space up on the line. And the next element will automatically wrap down to the next line. So that's what we're doing by changing this display to block. And then we're going to be changing the font weight to bold and the font style to italic. And the other thing is we're adding a margin top to the element. So that way, not only is it pushing everything to the next line, but anything that's above it, it's going to create a space between it and the thing above it by 1 em. So it's just going to give a bit of padding. You can see here in the screenshot, it's giving a bit of padding or a bit of spacing in between each of the labels. So just by copying that into the CSS styling, this one actually worked fine. So if I update this and go back to the form, so you can see here now that if this padding or this block, it takes up this entire space, and it's wrapping the values down, and then it's adding a value to this. So you have some options in styling. And if this is kind of uncomfortable for you, one of the things you can also do, because these are not selectable anymore, you can just put HTML directly into the value. So if you go back to this option here, if I wanted this to be red, bold, those kinds of things, I can just put that value here. So what I would do is I would add you basically have to add a span tag that wraps around the element. So that way it gives you an element that you can add styling to. And the way we do that is we just add style equals, and then so color would be for the font color, and we'll say red, and then you have to separate each statement by a semicolon. So colon red, we'll say font weight. Can't type. Font weight is bold, and this one we have to add. This one we don't have to add the important because I believe it automatically, like it's not overriding, but we'll try it, and we can always change it if we have to. And then font style is italic, and then we close it by a semicolon. So I'm just going to copy this so I have it because I have to type it again. But if we save this, we should automatically see that it changes here. It's going to have the checkbox here in the designer, but when we go back to the option group here, it should change. So there you go. So now we have that value there. And you can do so because you can add HTML to values. And one of the reasons we discourage this in normal practices is because when somebody clicks on this value to save it as a record, you know, if they open a record and like this is an actual value, it's clickable. All I see is the red fruit value in the beginning. Like for example, if I put it up here for the fruit option, so let's go ahead and do that. Because this one is just a regular checkbox. It doesn't have the option group on it. So if I change that to this, now it's a checkbox that I can actually check. And if I check this and save it, all I'm seeing in the front end is fruit, but what's being saved in the database in RedCap is this entire thing. That's what's being saved as the value. And so if you ever have to run a query or report on that value, this whole thing is the thing that's going to be returned to you. And so you don't want to use these for actual data entry, but because this OptGroup external module prevents these from being selected, then you can put any styling you want on these because they're never going to get saved to the database. So we have this as, you know, the red label. And if this is kind of cumbersome to try to figure out, one of the things you can do is use the rich text editor. So if I just created this and I went here and I selected this as red and italic, what I can do now is go into the source code and just look at, well, this one's going to give me the color. So one thing to note, the font weight. So if I selected this too and made it bold, we're used to like font weight bold, font style italic, but HTML also has some different formats for that. So anything that has the M means emphasized or emphasis. So we're wrapping that in an emphasis tag. And then this is the normal weight for RedCap. So if we did this as bold, you can see here that it looks the same as, so that's unbold, and then that's bold, but that's the normal one. But what you can do is there's also strong, and what that does is that basically makes it bold. But my point is that you could, if you don't know exactly how to build that styling, you can do it in the rich text editor and then highlight, go into the source code, grab that. So we'll change this to fruit, or we'll change this to vegetable, and we'll just copy that. And then I'm just going to hit cancel here so that way my changes don't mess with the label. But if I go here to vegetables and put this in here and change this to an S, it's going to give me that. Hold on one sec. So I didn't have when I pasted it, I got rid of my value here. So now this has, and then you'll notice here that this vegetables has padding around it on top and bottom. and that's because of the p tag. So if I change this to a span, because the paragraph tag by nature had in RedCap styling guide, it has default padding, whereas the span is literally just you're just capturing the text inside of it. So if I change it to a span, you'll see here now that it goes back to the way it was. So you can style these directly. You can use the rich text editor to come up with the HTML for those stylings. One of the nice things, one of the newer features in RedCap now is this edit custom styling. So you can add your CSS rules directly into this and have it apply in your project as opposed to having to use the RedCap CSS injector. The RedCap CSS injector is really nice because it also allows you to have different sets of rules for different instruments, whereas this is more, I believe this applies to all the projects. I'm not sure if you have a because this will show up on every instrument. And actually, that's one thing we can check out real quick. So if I go to the designer and I just create here, I'd be interested to see if the styling appears for that instrument. Yeah. So that's good to know. If anything that you apply to the styling for an instrument, it's instrument specific. So anytime you create a new instrument, that styling is gone. You have to add new styling again. So if you don't want to have to do that, you can use the RedCap CSS injector to apply to all your projects. But if you have things that you only want to apply to specific fields or specific instruments, you can use the CSS styling, or you can still use the CSS injector. But it's nice to have this as an option to really quickly add styles and then test styles out because you're able to put them here in the instrument and then immediately see them in the record as you go. So this is a really easy module to use. Really, it's just using this OptGroup action tag. And I believe if you, once you enable it, and you go to the action tags here, it should show up as value. Yep. So this will show you exactly what it does, how to use it. The documentation is pretty straightforward. It's mostly just quickly, how to use it, which is just using OptGroup. It tells you how to style it, and then the limitation is that it doesn't work with the autocomplete. So that's pretty much it for this module. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Carl.
Hey, so yeah, so I think you mentioned this, but I just wanted to make sure. So when you use the category headers, they don't show up on like data exports, like the what's coded as A and B.
Right. So in here, they'll show up for the data, like they'll show up here, but when you export, they won't show up because you can never select that value to save it as a record.
Okay,
So then
gotcha.
it'll never actually be
Right.
stored as data.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
If you export the data dictionary or look in the code book, they'll be there because they are considered options, but you're never going to have a value.
Checked
Um,
as that, right?
yeah, you can never select it as a value and save it. So then it doesn't get put into the database.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.